The passing part was great, right? Sawyer Robertson, 5 touchdowns. Most of Baylor quarterbacks had 9 years. Josh Cameron, 3 touchdown receptions. He was a beast. That was fun. But what really set Baylor in motion, especially early in this game when the passing game did not have rhythm, was the ground game. And I said it at the end of last week as more or less wishful thinking. Like, if Baylor's going to get this thing going, and if they want to beat a good team like Tech, they got to run the ball. And it's something they haven't done all year. They have not established the run, whether it be the backs or the choice of backs or the offensive line or the, being behind the sticks, whatever you want to attribute it to. They have not established the run this year, but for that Air Force game. Other than that, no, nil, nada. Hadn't been there. But Saturday it was there. And I hope it's not fleeting time because they ran the heck out of it. 255 yards on the ground is the most they've had this season. And also the most balanced they've been. 274 through the air, 255 on the ground. They couldn't even get to 255 total yards earlier this year against Utah. Now they're running for that and throwing for a lot more. Throwing and running for more than that number. And it's been tremendous. Obviously, Bryson Washington was a huge part of that. But the Bears might have gotten an assist from an old friend, an old fella you and I know as former offensive coordinator Jeff Grimes, now at Kansas, because here's what Dave Aranda said about the key to their success running the ball on Saturday.
Makes it easier when you run the ball. I think that people have to be able to respect it. I think we put in the stretch play or the wide zone play during the bye week, and it's interesting. We'd run that for so long here, or it seems like so long, and when we put it in, no one knew what to do, and so we had to teach it all over again and everything else. But you saw there's multiple times where we ran the stretch play and we're able to crease the defense, and we're such a double team lock zone deal, and so the linebacker fits are to fall back to the back. And so, if the back's always this way, the fits are always falling here. But if they're falling here and we go this way, then there's a crease right there. And that happened multiple times. And so we'll see people adjust to it. But I think the ability to have both runs that are this way and runs that are this way helps out our O-line. And so we'll continue with that.
I know there were plenty of you watching and listening and shuddering when you heard wide zone. Oh no. I thought Halloween was another week away. What does he mean wide zone? What? I know. It was back. And it worked. It worked to perfection. You saw it a couple of times. I think that early big-time Bryson Washington run would have been that stretch play. So how about that after the struggles last year offensively, especially running the ball against Tech, by the way. Remember, 17 rushing yards last year. And for the struggles that Kansas has had so far this year, and I know it's fun to make it a meme, but the Jeff Grimes play, it worked. It worked. And I think part of it needs to be attributed to the fact that Baylor also was in a rhythm passing the ball too, specifically in that second half. And that opens up things in the running lane. And that's where it should work with Jake Spavital's offense. But so it's from the grimy playbook. And it needed a little bit better circumstances here at Baylor, and it probably needed a change coming into this year, right? I'm not arguing that, but it's just so funny to me that part of the finally having success running the ball was taking a page out of the book of the guy you had in here last year. But it worked really well with that, with Bryson Washington specifically in this week. I mean, he's the big performer on the ground. He goes 10 carries, just 10 carries. But gets 116 yards, almost 12 yards a carry on a decent sample size there. Obviously, 2 touchdowns mixed in too. Dawson Pendergrass got some touches, 7 for 36, which is over 5 yards a carry. Richard Reese gave them some valuable touches, a couple in the passing game, not necessarily just turning it around and handing off to him. He had that one catch in the 2-minute drill before halftime of I think it was 24, 25 yards that helped set them up for that touchdown right before half. I have been critical of, hey, you need to pick a guy or two and roll with it. And it seems the last 2 weeks, and obviously specifically in this game because it was more successful, they have done that. It was Bryson Washington and Dawson Pendergrass. They were getting they ran it 33 times in this game, And those guys accounted for just more than half, 17 of it. And you mix in some of those jet plays, Monterey Baldwin got one. Jamal Bell got one late in the game. Daquan Finn got a couple of carries too. But those are your bell cows. And we have seen it now twice with Bryson Washington this season. I mean, he should be your number one back. He's the only back that Baylor has that has gotten 100 yards this year, and he's now done it twice. And this is what is going to be key going forward, because like I mentioned in the last segment, like, we know Sawyer can throw the ball. We know Sawyer can potentially win a game on his arm alone. And we know that he spreads the love. But as he was having good games before this, and they weren't winning. And part of that reason was they couldn't run it. They couldn't establish the run. They were too one-dimensional. And they became an easy team to defend. They were a very difficult team to defend in this game Saturday against Tech. And a big reason why was the run game. And therefore, a big reason why was a page out of Jeff Grimes' playbook. I didn't think I'd be saying that. I didn't think we would be talking about a Baylor blowout win at Tech and giving some credit to Jeff Grimes. But obviously, plenty of credit needs to go to Jake Spavital or Matt Spavital, depending on what you're listening to on the broadcast. But I thought Spav had a really good game plan in this one. And I know there are some fans out there that have really not loved the play calls. I've been truly okay with how he's managed games throughout this. I remember that BYU game where, as bad as the score was at halftime, I thought they really only had one or two bad calls in the whole first half. And other than that, I thought it was a lack of execution. And that's where we walk the fine line of how much goes on the coaches, how much goes on the players. But I think Spavital's done a good job. I thought this offense would click a little bit sooner than it did, but it's clicking. You saw it in the second half against BYU. You saw it in the first half against Iowa State, and they hadn't put it together. Well, at Tech, they put it together. And I know Tech's front four sucks. Like, it does. I get that. And overall, their defense is not great. But this was a team that had made some things happen on the defensive end to win games. Like, they went into Arizona and held them under 20 points, and they won that game. They won a couple shootouts in there, so it doesn't look like a great defense, but they had improved in Big 12 play after the disaster against Abilene Christian, the disaster up in Pullman, and their first game, I think, in the Big 12 was Cincinnati, and that was high scoring. And since then, they had found their stride a little bit defensively, and you knocked them out of that stride, thanks mainly to the run game, which led to such easy passes. I'll tell you what my favorite drive of this game was before we look ahead at the schedule. It was in the third quarter, actually probably went into I think it was the last play of the third and the first few plays of the fourth. They threw a pass out for Bryson Washington for a couple of yards, and then they went Bryson Washington for 6, Bryson Washington for 16, Bryson Washington for 34, and then screen pass, Monterey Baldwin, untouched, end zone, 30 yards out, front flip, game over. Like, that is just crushing a team's will in there. Power run just enough so that you could slip out a screen pass to the fastest player on the team, and we're done. That's all she wrote. Sawyer doesn't even need to look downfield one time, and they put the ball in the end zone. That's impressive. That's impressive. Thank you for making it to the end of the video, and thank you for making the Locked On Podcast Network part of your daily routine. We have got you covered with the most Baylor Bears athletics coverage of any outlet that's not directly tied into Baylor University. So if you want more of that, be sure to like and subscribe. Ring that notification bell to get notified every time we're dropping a video here on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks, and sick 'em.